been stabbed twice. It comes with the territory.
Just stating the obvious.
You need to just chill out, man. You need to just chill out. So a Senate inquiry's been examining whether the current dole payment of $246 a week is enough to survive on. They discovered it's not, that it's entrenching people in poverty, and so low it's actually stopping some people from getting jobs. But they're not recommending that it be increased. Find out why. Also tonight on Hack, whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? More than 80% of the young people in New South Wales who are in juvenile detention awaiting trial don't actually end up being convicted. So will new bail laws stop young people being locked up for no reason? Stick around, we'll let you know. A Senate inquiry has found that Newstart and youth allowance payments are far too low. But despite the findings, there's no commitment to increase them, and it's outraged the Greens and social welfare groups. But it's not just the lefties that are upset. Even the Business Council of Australia says that the payments are so low, they're actually stopping people from getting off the dole. So I want to hear from you tonight. What do you reckon? Should the dole be increased? And could you live on $246 a week? Give me a call, 1300 0555 36. That's 1300 0555 36. Send me a text, 0439 75 7555. Do you think the dole should be increased? Hack's Julie Holman has the story.
I've actually just received a payment today. I've paid my rent and recharged my phone that I need for work and put some money on my Go card. I only have $100 left, and that's to do food shopping.
And is that for the next 2 weeks?
For the next 2 weeks, yeah.
Chris is 20. She's a student in Brizzy and gets youth allowance and rent assistance, which is about $440 a fortnight. But she says it's not enough.
I've had to pull out of courses that I've wanted to do to try and get a job later on in the future because I can't afford it. There's so many things that would have been really good to do for me at the moment that I can't because I can't afford it.
Youth allowance was one payment that a government report which has just been released had a look into. They also looked at Newstart, which is a payment you get if you're looking for work. If you're single and don't have kids, you receive $492.60 a fortnight on Newstart. That's $35 a day. A Senate committee has found the payments were far too low for people to live an acceptable quality of life on.
Would we like to pay more? Of course we would. But in an Australian budget of $300 to $400 billion, when a third of it, 35% of it, is already in the social security and welfare sector, you must say to yourself, can we afford to increase our debt? Well, of course we can't.
Liberal Senator Chris Back is the chairman of the reference committee which looked into the adequacy of the Newstart and other welfare payments. Welfare groups and the Greens said Newstart is too low and it makes people live in poverty. They wanted the committee to back an increase of $50 a week. But despite his own findings that you can't have an acceptable quality of life on these payments, Senator Back makes no excuses for not recommending an increase.
When it comes to an allowance like Newstart, the emphasis, of course, is to give them some support between one job which they may have lost and getting back into employment.
But are you comfortable with the fact that under these payments people are actually living in poverty?
Absolutely not. Who could be? But when you take
then why not recommend an increase?
Well, simply because of the cost to the budget. The estimate of even $50 a week increase in Newstart is of the order of $8 billion to the Australian economy. If you were to extend that to other allowances as well, almost $15 billion.
Green Senator Rachel Seward was outraged the committee didn't recommend any increase to the welfare payment.
How can a country say they're in surplus if they have people living in poverty? That surplus is on the backs of the most disadvantaged Australians.
Earlier this year, the Senator tried to live off Newstart for just a week and she struggled. And she said she heard plenty of evidence of how the low payments actually make it really difficult to get off welfare.
I only did it for a week, so I only got a taste. I know that. But these people are living it week in, week out, month in, month out, and some year in, year out. They talk about not only material deprivation, but what it does to how you feel about yourself, how you're motivated. So living in poverty becomes a barrier in itself, and that's one of the issues that we think the government really needs to listen to, is that by condemning people to live in poverty, you're creating yet another barrier to employment.
The report looked into a range of welfare payments, including Newstart and the student payment Oz study.
What we're hearing time and time again from young people on those payments is that they're not adequate amounts of money to live on.
The Australian Youth Affairs Coalition spoke to 200 people in putting together a submission to the committee. Their spokesperson, Andrew Cummings, says people at uni can't support themselves properly unless their family helps out too, which means for people who can't get help, their quality of life is much worse.
For those young people, the youth allowance is a nice thing to have, but for those who don't have that kind of support, it's an absolutely vital link. And if they don't have an adequate amount of money to live on, then they're having to either not study because they can't afford the cost of studying, or in the case of job seeking, it really limits their ability to look for work.
Liberal Senator Chris Back says young people have unrealistic expectations about the kinds of assistance government should be offering them.
We sort of had people coming forward to us saying, well, I've had my gap year now I need financial assistance. And I would say, what country in the world, with a population of 23 million people, in a landmass the size of the United States of America, can actually afford to assist and fund? I don't think we need to. If someone's had a gap year, and if that's their decision to have a gap year, all well and good, but you would expect during that gap year they would actually find employment and they would have enough money in the bank to actually bankroll their study, at least for 2 or 3 years, and then start to pick up others. I don't think it's the role of the Australian taxpayer to be helping fund gap years. I really don't.
But for Chris, who's 20 and studying in Brisbane, for her the money isn't a luxury. It's just enough to survive on.
I guess I just feel like they do really just think we just want the money, I guess, for personal purposes. It's really helping us move further in life.
And that is Julia Holman reporting there. Now, we actually had Senator Doug Cameron, who was sitting in our studio up until a few seconds ago, and he was going to be our live studio guest because he was a contributing member on this inquiry, and he's been called back into the Senate for an important vote because it is the last day in Parliament for the year. So we hope to have Doug back on the show before we finish up by 6, so we'll keep you tuned what's happening with that. But for now, we're going to hear what you think about this. Should the dole be increased? Claire, you're in Melbourne. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I definitely think it should be. I lived in Bendigo last year and tried to get a job when I moved up there, but I moved up there for study purposes and wasn't able to find part-time work. So I lived off Oz study for the whole year, and I really felt the pinch of very much having to live really close to the poverty line.
What about the argument that if you increase the dole, it's actually not going to encourage people to get jobs, it'll just, make it more fun to be on the dole?
I don't think a minimal increase such as $50 a fortnight is really going to encourage people to sit around and live off the dole. It's not a happy lifestyle. There's no luxuries. Last year, after I paid my rent, and I was paying minimal rent, I was paying about $80 a week, I couldn't afford to do hardly anything. I'd pay my bus fare to go and visit my boyfriend in Ballarat, and it didn't even leave us enough money to go out for dinner. So I moved back to Melbourne where there was work, and I support myself now through my studies.
Well, good on you. Thanks for the call, Claire. And I've got Jeremy on the line from Tassie. Tassie, you're employed as a first-year mechanic, as an apprentice as a mechanic. What do you think? You mustn't be getting too much doing that kind of work?
No, first-year wages is $7.60 an hour, so over 38-hour weeks, so $280 a week. So it's not a whole lot more than being on the dole. And I've recently moved out of home about 4 months ago, and I've got friends who are still still on the dole, and it's kind of like, why would you bother working all the time when you can get the same money at home?
So you're not earning that much more than your mates that are on the dole?
No, not a great deal, no.
Yeah, right. So, but what about the argument, Jeremy, that it's stopping people from getting jobs because they don't have enough money to travel to job interviews, they don't have enough money to get a haircut, get nice clothes to go? I mean, it is our taxes that are paying for that dole. Don't we want people to get off it?
Yes, well, I think it is possible. I'm earning a little bit more, but I am getting by. I've got a car, I can drive around. It is doable if you watch how you spend. Mm-hmm. But with a larger increase, of course, there's going to be less need to get a job. But Yeah, so it makes it difficult.
It is a tricky one. Jeremy, thanks so much for the call. And we've got a text here. Someone says, stop paying pollies so much and help out the battlers. Pollies are ruining the country. Why do they deserve so much? And we'll keep you updated as to whether we will get our politician back on Hack before the show is out.
Bear in mind, this guy was a massive loser.
Well, there's absolutely no evidence for that.
And I think a lot of people share that feeling. Their parents were getting hard.
I don't know, to be honest.
Now, the good news is that we have found our Senator, Doug Cameron, who's come racing back from the Senate, where he's just been voting to talk to Triple J. How are you, Doug?
Oh, hi, Sophie. I'm good, thanks.
Thanks for making the time to come back and join us. Now, before we start asking questions about this Newstart inquiry that came out today, it was a bit of an explosive day in Parliament after Tony Abbott made comments this morning on Brekkie TV about the Prime Minister. So we'll just have a listen to what Tony Abbott said this morning.
Well, it demonstrates that she misled the West Australian Corporate Affairs Commission, and that is obviously a very serious matter. That would certainly appear to be in breach of the law. So this is a very serious matter, and it's something that the Prime Minister has been stonewalling on.
Now, that's Tony Abbott suggesting there, Doug, that the PM has broken the law. Julie Gillard said today in Question Time that if he can't substantiate that claim, then he should unreservedly apologise. He didn't, and he's called for a judicial inquiry. Should there be one?
No, there certainly shouldn't be a judicial inquiry. My view is that parliamentary standards have fallen to their lowest level in a long time. This attack on the Prime Minister, vilifying the Prime Minister, personalising the issues against the Prime Minister, I think you've got to say enough is enough. Tony Abbott was given 15 minutes to prosecute his case against the Prime Minister, and he floundered. He did not have a substantial issue to put forward.
But isn't the scandal sucking the oxygen out of the Gillard government? Doesn't something need to give here?
This is exactly what the coalition want, and it's about trying to take the oxygen out of the political atmosphere. It's about, so you can't discuss the National Disability Insurance Scheme. You can't discuss the needs of the poor in this country. You can't discuss Gonski and the education. You can't discuss aged care, because it's all about this personal attacks and vilification with absolutely no substance.
Well, let's start talking about the needs of the poor then. What do you think, Doug? Should the Newstart allowance be increased? Because this inquiry basically said, look, it's too low, but we're not going to do anything about it. We don't recommend it be increased. What do you think?
Well, I think it should be increased, and I've been on the record for some time now to say that living on $245 a week is impossible. What it does is it means that you are relying on charity, that you are living in poverty, and with the poverty line at $358 and the minimum wage at $606.40, to live on Newstart on $245 is really mission impossible. So you rely on charity, and it's just not the way for a wealthy society like ours to behave.
So, Doug, why isn't your government going to increase it then?
Well, there's been a number of politicians arguing that we should, a number of Labour politicians. There's also been calls from business to increase it, and there's also been, the Henry Review said that there should be an analysis of the Newstart allowance. I agree with all that, but can I just say, I think that we need to put people ahead of budget surpluses.
So why isn't Bill Shorten, your employment minister, going to do that? I mean, you guys give $16 billion over 4 years to big multinational mining companies. This is in direct subsidies to big mining companies. If you followed the recommendations that the Greens want and the Business Council to increase the dole, that would cost you $15 billion. So he says that we can't afford it. We can't afford to do this, yet you're giving that money to the mining companies.
Well, you see, I think this, ACOS have welcomed this report. And ACOS have indicated, and in the report, the Labour senators say that we would advocate for an increase of $50 a week. Now, that's what a lot of Labour parliamentarians will do. We will advocate for an increase in $50 a week. The report also goes on to say that we should review the indexing arrangements so that we can get a better indexing of that, of Newstart, and that we should give people the right to work for 8 hours a fortnight without it affecting Newstart. and that we can commission a comprehensive review. It's a very, very complex issue, this, because there's lots of linkages across it, and I'm not making any excuses. My view is that we should have done this a long time ago, but we should focus on this in the new year.
Well, Senator Doug Cameron, let us know if you manage to convince the ministers' minds in your government. Thank you for chatting to Triple J.
Well, good on you, Sophie, and have a Merry Christmas and a good New Year to you and all your listeners.
Cheers, Doug.
What you're saying is absolutely false. She said, it's too hard. I don't like you doing this.
If you're not happy, then go.
There's nothing but victims. Everyone loses.